When we read a gospel, we often expect a clear beginning and a clear ending. But the Gospel of Mark challenges that expectation on every level. Unlike the other accounts, Mark's narrative moves quickly and abruptly through the life of Jesus Christ. And then, just when we reach the climax of the story, something unexpected happens. It just ends. No reason, no explanation, just an ending that's just as abrupt as the gospel itself. Tonight, on Chasing the Past, we're going to explore the structure, authorship, and the ending, the short ending, of Mark, focusing on what scholars believe to be the original conclusion. And it just might reveal the layers of early Christianity in thought and in storytelling. Let's kick it. What's up, guys? I have to apologize right up the get-go. I missed last Tuesday. I promise I didn't mean to do it on purpose. I had oral surgery, last-minute oral surgery. So for a while, I had to go 3 times. So all 3 of those, right? Not like my teeth are fake or anything, but like they really had to get all up in there. So throughout last week, I was numbed up. So it would have been really funny. I kind of wish I did a little bit, where I was so numb and I tried to talk on here just to see what it was, just for fun, but also probably not the most informative or entertaining. But yeah, I just wanted to apologize for that. And today I plan to do a couple of these that kind of tie in together, because we're going over the short ending of Mark and this scholarship consensus and what it means for the early church gatherings. Like, what if this is the earliest, Markan priority is what we're going to talk about today, where Mark being first, and then the original ending just ends. You're like, what? You're like, what? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Anyway, we'll get into it. Oh, so the piece of the story of how I got to, again, super funny, because I'm all numbed up last week. And there were people going door to door. And, I might rant here a little before we get into the details. But it kind of made me worried with these door-to-door, evangelists that are happening. Not that there's necessarily a problem with it, other than it, for most of the neighborhood, is kind of annoying. But these were 2 young women that, right, because I was home, right, during the middle of the day, all numb, and, one might have been 19, 20, and the other one, she was, 14. Why aren't you in school? What are you doing? It's the middle of the week. And, I watched them from my window go to each house in the little cul-de-sac and do the same thing. They had their, Bible binder books that are all wrapped. It has the zipper case on it. And, that was worrying on multiple levels. One is being a parent, but also, where are your parents, right? You guys are alone, right? They had, a clipboard, too, with the neighborhood. And you're going door to door in the middle of the day to strangers' homes. 2 women, vulnerable. And it just made me go, what is this? And so, of course, naturally, I answered the door, not to be a jerk and respond with all this stuff you guys don't know anything about scholarship. I wasn't doing that. I just wanted to, well, one, make sure they had not been harmed physically or anything, and then make sure they're okay. But why is the church sending out young women to the doorsteps? Before we even let our kiddo go anywhere, we checked the database for strange people, and if they go 2 blocks one way, 1 block the other, and then another one up. Like, they're in some serious danger. There's people over there, and then there's a new apartment complex over here that's, like, not so great, like, 4 minutes away. So, like, why in the world are we sending vulnerable people, children, to go door to door? Like, where are the adults? Like, the elders, right? Where's the pastor, right? Why aren't you coming to my door? Why are we sending these young kids on some, like, save the world mission in the middle of a Wednesday? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And we got to Mark because that's what they quoted the end of Mark, and then they quoted the Great Commission in Matthew. And we'll get to that section there of where those bleed through, but just a little teaser, right? Mark ends in Codex Sinaiticus and the Codex Vaticanus. These are 4th century manuscripts, the most accurate ones we have, the oldest ones we have, and they don't have anything past 16:8 in Mark. And so there's a similar quote-unquote Great Commission in Mark that technically comes from Matthew 28. And I knew that. And so when they told me that, it made me really worried, because now we're sending essentially these, like, indoctrinated children soldiers on, like, a righteousness mission. Oh, I didn't mad gab. I love it. But then it's not even an accurate message. So we're putting people, vulnerable people, in danger with the false, like a blasé, like, oh, I'll be fine, Jesus is with me. And it's like, not in that neighborhood over there. That could be very dangerous for you. And my immediate thing was, like, me and my fiance watched Heretic, which is an A24 film. Excuse me. Which is related to that. It's 2 women that go to this dude's house. And he only brought them there to, like, trap them, right? And to, like, force them into doing stuff. And that's the whole point. Like, oh, a heretic, right? But it's the opposite. Anyway, I won't blow the movie. Anyway, that is the story that was a real life example that I really haven't witnessed that at all until this moment when people come up to my door. And now they're doing, and I never did that. Like, when we were in church all the time, Wednesday, Sunday, after school programs. They never sent us as children door to door to, like, preach some message. And, yeah, you're in 2s, right? But still, like, the world is not super stable right now. And most of the world does not really care for the Western idea of dogma. So if there was ever a shot in the dark to have something bad happen, it just made me really worried for, like, the parents and their kids. Like, do they know? Like, if they do, is that irresponsible? Like, why? What is happening? And it all came down to Mark and Matthew, I guess. So we'll get into that. So we're going to go through let's go through the bullet point list. We're going to go through the list that I have. So I have 6 points, 6 important points, and then we'll kind of go through them in detail to why this message kind of, one, worried me, and then also, like, people need to, they need to know. Not because it's, like, wrong, but because you could inadvertently be putting someone in danger by an improper or inaccurate message. And so we don't have, let's go with point 1. The Gospels named Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, there's no authorship that claims that they wrote that, right? The Justin the Martyr called them memoirs. Yeah, memoirs of the apostles is what he said. That's what, but again, we don't even know if he's referencing those ones. So the only person who gave these Gospels a name was Irenaeus. That was 185 CE. So they did not claim authorship. The Gospel, any of the 12 disciples did not write these books. And there's no Hebrew. That's point 2. It is Greek all the way, right? No evidence for Hebrew, then translated to Greek. It is Greek from the get-go. And I've heard this a lot now I don't know why this is the message, but it seems like we've been repeating something to give it authority, but it isn't accurate, but it makes that group or that person feel better about what they're doing, which is, it's a no-no. That is a bad. A bad. Okay, this is we're having fun. So we kind of established Mark in priority. So that is the idea that Mark is the earliest gospel, around 65 to 75 CE. And in the last chapter of Mark, you get this spreading of the good news, right? And so in Mark, the one that really hit me that I always hear is 16, 15 to 18. And I'll just put it on the screen and breeze through it, but I'm using the NRSVUE. And he said to them, "Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to the whole creation. The one who believes and is baptized will be saved, but the one who does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe. By using my name, they will cast out demons, they will speak in new tongues, they will pick up snakes, and if they drink any deadly thing, it will not hurt them. They will lay their hands on the sick, and they will recover." Now, that's the one you get about this good news message, why going door to door is important, right? And then you're always going to be safe, right? Like, which reminds me of like, the snake handlers and all these things. But in my mind, it's like a mental, like the psychology of religion. It's like this mental idea of like, see, I'm going to be perfectly fine even in the worst possible situations because the gospel says it will not hurt me. I will be fine. They can feed me a poison tea, right? Or hand me a snake, and nothing bad will happen to me. Well, if there's poison in it, probably not. And then if you pick up a snake, pray to God it's not poisonous. Because if it bites you, you are going to need a hospital. Like, that's not... There are things that are real and things that are like a protective mask for you doing the thing that you're doing. I do not like that. Back to the original story. If it's two vulnerable women doing this door to door, the odds are ever in your favor that you might knock on the wrong door, right? And maybe they checked, and maybe they're not going to that bad neighborhood or whatever. But who knows? Either way, that still seems like a diluted message that you'll be safe because Jesus is with you. Well, we also Googled which neighborhoods not to go to, so here's your clipboard. Do you see what I'm saying? It just kind of irked me a little bit. And this whole idea, right? So they quoted Mark, and then they gave the Great Commission, Matthew 28:16 to 20. And the funniest part is Mark ends at 16:18. So everything after that till verse 20 is a 2nd century addition the whole point was to combine a cohesive story. Because let's say they had Mark already, right? Matthew has his Great Commission, you have Luke, and then you have John, right? Now you have to make Mark make sense. And it's also the one I rarely heard in church was Mark. It was always like Matthew, and it was always John, right? Luke was used sometimes, and then Mark was used very rarely if it had like something relating to Matthew, And I mean, that makes sense. That's how it's written. And they don't tell you that, right? So like 97% of Mark is in Matthew. And so it's always like, it's funny, it's the opposite actually, where they quote Matthew and then they go, we should add Mark. And it goes, hold on, shouldn't we flip it? Shouldn't we find what Matthew's using from Mark and then, oh, cool, we should go in reverse. But again, it's a later edition. So it does end at 16:8. And in Mark, it's other than the miracles and all of these things, it is heavy on preaching, right? So I get it, like go and spread the good news. And then also, even Matthew says, go above, baptize in the name of Christ and all these signs. Anyway, it's this making disciples of all nations type idea. But the thing that I found that was cool is that Matthew has that's an original piece. So that's like part of the thing that is a Matthew only thing. Then later added by, I guess, it has to be a scribe. I don't know why I paused there. Added by a scribe into the 2nd century to the end of Mark. And again, remember when we go into all this detail, this is, tomorrow we could find an entire book. Like, oh my God, we found Mark. And it's from it's from 90 CE. Cool. It has that in there. So it could change, but for the majority of scholarship, this is the view. And it doesn't make sense to me that if we know that, why the heck are we, for me too, I look back at me at that same age, 14 and 20, and, I get it. Like, I relate to it. I really do. Like, I remember being there like, ooh, it's my own personal salvation, right? Like, that fear is, I don't need to have fear because I have, Jesus, right? We're saving the world, right? We're going and spreading this message. And, it just seems hypocritical that they aren't adults. I've never had an adult. This has happened twice, by the way. This is just the most recent one. They were all kids. Like, they were children that came to my door with their flowery or like cool, like teenage, like Bible cover with the zippers. Like, my parents would never, love you guys, by the way, thank you. They would never send me on this evangelist mission without an adult. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I get it. The world is turbulent. So instead of like tapping into the fear of having a turbulent world, putting on a fake cover to then do this save the world mission, like, at this point I'm just rambling, but let's get back to scholarship. So the whole point is that Mark ends at number 8, which is this: the woman flee from the tomb in fear and say nothing to anyone. And I remember to me that sounds like, if I'm an author, right, and I'm writing this down, right, an educated Greek, the world has, 10% of the empire is educated. If I'm writing this, it's definitely a narrative tool that I'm using, right? Ooh, because it's like a double entendre, right? It's like, ooh, they leave in fear, the women do, and they say nothing to anyone. Oh, but then how'd the message get out, right? Like, it makes you, hey, oh my, like, it's kind of saying something without saying something, and that's just how it ends. And so people are like, it's so abrupt, right? It's unresolved, but it also, if intellectually you look at it and you go, whoa, maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's something else. Maybe I need to go and talk to the authors of these books or the people in this community. Maybe I need to learn more. It like drives a curiosity if you read it the way that it is written. But the thing that is troublesome is there's no post-resurrection, no appearance of Jesus, no everything I just read about, the miracles and snakes and the entire 16:9-20, right? He never shows himself. He never says these things. It's just added later to make it cohesive. Now, that feels kind of, like sleight of hand, like, ooh, over here. But this is really what we're doing, which also takes away from the author who wrote the book of Mark. And it ends with this curiosity, both in like fear and silence, but it makes you go into your own mind to think about it. And, I really do like that. But I'm not saying like, oh, I'm an intellectual, but it makes you go into your own inner psyche and look at it. And again, we already talked about Sinaiticus and Vaticanus and how those short endings are original. And again, that's one of the strong arguments for this original ending because it's not in there. Also, side note, it's called Vaticanus because they found it in the Vatican, like in the archives. Like, what else you got in there, dude? Like, You got, what are they going to be, Codex Vaticanus #2? And then you're going to, oh my God, look, it's in there, right? And it's older, right? It seems like, I wonder if the Vatican has so much stuff that they have no idea, right? Like, they might have everything we ever need down there, and they're just like, it's too big to explore. We'll do it some other time. like what? Like, that's just, Sinaiticus is an interesting story. I have the Sisters of Sinai. There's a book up there, and it's a story of the two women who found, Codex Sinaiticus. And, that might be a fun read after this one. But the longer ending, right? Again, we have this, like, Great Commission, risen Jesus, and then the miraculous signs. That's just a harmonization. So how do we determine this, right? So if you're a scholar, mostly it's stylistically, right? There's a clear stylistic difference, which, different vocabulary, different writing styles. It's less consistent than Mark's, like, rhythm in the original narrative. And it gives this, like, it's a different feel to it almost, right? So far that, especially if there's a time difference, right? Let's say it was 65 to 75, and that's a good timeline. Then you get into, the 100s, and someone adds it in later. Like, we forget, too, that 30 years is a long time. Like, I'll be 30. Like, when I was born, it was like, what's a computer look like? And I remember the old, boxy, crappy computers, and you're like, what is this, Windows 2? Like, it doesn't, like, it's really bad. Actually, I remember playing pinball in the 2000s. That, like, a computer built, had pinball on it, and I went to go see my mom at work, and I'm playing it with the keys, and I see the color, right? Like, the crappy, like, off-white, eggshell type color. And now, like, we have 4K televisions. Like, I know it's technology and that's different than this, but I guess books could be some type of, they could be comparative to that technology. Maybe it's moving it religiously for the mind to explore a new way of thinking. So then that would be some type of, I don't know, I'm just making that up. But it could be, I could see that argument. And there are a few analysis, I guess, of why these, I guess theories would be the right word, on the ending. And it's intentional. That's the clear one, right? There's a underlying idea of maybe, like, you don't need to see it to have faith, right? You don't need to see the risen Christ to know. Maybe it's about the community that you have to, we talked about this earlier. Maybe it makes you curious enough to go talk to these groups, find out more. Oh my God, now you have faith without sight, right? Now you're like, I'm in, right? I don't need some physical show. Like, I have faith for it. Maybe it's narrative mystery, right? Oh, you want to find out about it, right? It invites the reader to maybe respond to it. Maybe the ending is because this earliest book wants other people try to top me. Like, I ended it like, boom, like the same discussion we're doing right now. Maybe that's what he was hoping for. And then other people, they did Matthew, and they were like, we got it, nailed him. And then you have Luke that goes, listen, I may not be, and he says that in the beginning too. In Luke, it says, I am not a first-hand witness. I'm not anybody that saw this stuff. But I'm going to make the most accurate account I can. And so then he wrote Luke, and then he wrote Acts, right? So the same author wrote Luke and then Acts, based on scholarship consensus. So it's like they're one-upping each other, which I thought was really cool. And then, another one that I don't really like, but I'm going to put it in there just because I'm not trying to be any biased, but it's like a lost ending. To me, that feels like you're trying to explain why it ends that way, rather than understanding the text, right? And then the other one is, we already discussed, it's a deliberate narrative technique. So a literary strategy, right, to end in fear, end in silence, and it reflects, this human reaction to something beyond what you can't explain. So it's a style to explain divinity in a very cohesive way, as if someone's reacting to this thing happening, right? And so maybe it leaves the resurrection implied, right? Maybe they saw something and it's just so fearful they can't. And that's good too. Now, we have all this information about Mark. We now know, like, why does this matter? Like, what's important? Like, why, who cares if Mark ended there and ended here? Well, the first one should be, that's a good question for us socially. Are we putting unnecessary risk, putting people in unnecessary and unsafe circumstances for a message that we don't fully understand, right? Or, maybe you just want to understand how this message developed. This is a key piece of that, right? It's an early form of, this new gospel tradition starting with Mark. So then you can understand the author, you can understand the time period, you can understand everything better by looking at this and studying this earliest form of the gospel tradition. Because then it also tells you maybe some of these stories are, and let me go back to this actually. It's dangerous to me if we don't understand this and we just say Jesus said so. Because maybe he didn't. Maybe it's just like me and you writing in a book, adding something, and putting words in his mouth. Okay. Do we see a problem? I mean, I see a problem. Because if you don't understand that, then you can just attribute anything to this Jesus character. Oh, he said this. No, you didn't. You said it. Yeah. You wrote that down. He didn't say that. You're making him say that. That's something that I feel we have lost. We just kind of take it face value and we go, it's beyond, our belief. It's beyond anything we could comprehend. It's beyond our own understanding, right? But in reality, we're just looking at what someone else wrote. Another human being. And we're going, wow, Jesus is just amazing. No, it's not. He wrote it. Like, Jesus didn't write that. Right? I mean, there's no way. Again, there's no Hebrew. There's no Aramaic. There is no way that they wrote this down. It's Greek specific. So now we're looking at an educated person, a minority of the empire, now a minority of people who are writing these types of books. And we're listening to that person who might just be trying to sell a narrative to you. That's an important distinction. We have to make those, we have to separate those. Because then, if we do that, to me that feels like we get to honesty, we get to truth. We understand. And also, something that just came to my head, we all can do that. Right? We have this ability to affect other people around us by being honest, truthful, and writing down a message. That's why books are important. That's why, stories drive the human species. And this is just an example of that. But I don't like the idea of putting people in unnecessary risk putting them at risk in general for something we don't understand. That feels very irresponsible to me and very dangerous. And it should show that the stories of Jesus then developed over time. And as we look at that, well, maybe just like the Nag Hammadi library, there is a distinct diversity among these early Christian groups, right? It's not cohesive like we've been taught. It's very diverse. The styles are different. People have different ideas of what it is. It develops later. Not until, late 3rd, early 4th century do we get any type of structure put together. So these groups are just everywhere. And again, Nag Hammadi is a perfect example. I did a video on that in the beginning to try to maybe establish some of these early Christian groups. And, it's important to study Mark. Bart Ehrman's a big component of having me look at Mark because I've been reading it, writing down in my notebook, like going through it sentence by sentence and just going, wow, oh, I didn't know that, right? Because maybe that's the closest we get to the earliest tradition. You have Paul's letters, of course, but at least the gospel tradition, you got to read Mark. And you got to read it for what it is, not what you're imposing from other books on that. Because, in essence, Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, well, Luke, Acts, then John, right? And it's like it's like 10 years apart. Boom, boom, boom. A lot can change in the zeitgeist of the social population in 10 years. Each. Boom, 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 boom. But maybe that's the point, right? We're trying to get to the source of the material. And I just really I feel better actually doing this. I feel better about hopefully maybe someone sees this and there are kids doing door-to-door missionary work in unsafe neighborhoods or doing something bad. And, maybe they've never even thought of this. They've just heard from the people who are running the organization, like, make sure you tithe. Also, we're doing an evangelical mission this week, right? Like, maybe this helps someone in some way. It helps me at least feel like I'm doing something other than, walking into a church wherever they came from and going, what the hell are you guys doing? Right? Like that doesn't seem productive. That won't change anything. Maybe this will. And, I hope it does. Regardless, the ending of Mark, it leaves us with questions more than it does answers. I know that can be difficult, but again, there's no dramatic ending, there's no resolution, there's no final appearance, there's no clear sense of closure. But maybe that's like the point, right? Maybe it's the sense of something where Mark wasn't trying to end, whoever wrote Mark, I should say, wasn't trying to resolve the story, but maybe the point was to invite you in. Maybe to go to these communities, to narrate through action and belief and use this narrative to reflect some message for you. Maybe it's a turbulent time for you and you're like, wow, this message seems pretty good, but I don't know how it ends. Maybe I should go talk to him. Boom. Like that's good enough for me. That would work. Like I would go, hey man, if I'm reading something else like an ancient text, I'm like, God, I really wish I could just go talk to those Sumerians, see what's up. Like I read those a lot. And, maybe not all stories need to end neatly to have purpose, to have a message. Maybe the message is that it doesn't end neatly, right? And I think we lose that a lot. And, there's a part of, searching for the divine, never finding it, but maybe it's like a challenge or a message of some kind to seek it out yourself, find it for yourself. And, maybe some of these like meaningful truths you have to find. It's not going to be an obvious message of like, yes, this always, right? And I think that's a beautiful way to end the video, right? Seek for yourself. Find these texts. Maybe something speaks to you. Maybe, I've said this a myriad of times, but whether it's, the gospel or whether it's any other book, like there's something in there. There are nuggets of good information from all religious beliefs. And so maybe that's the message. Maybe it's this big overarching divinity that we'll never going to understand, but there are little nuggets. There are pieces everywhere, and we got to put the puzzle together. And I like that. I do. It's the never-ending challenge that I won't give up. I just can't. I'll always do it. But anyway, I'll end there. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And again, I don't plan to have mouth surgery anytime recently. So Tuesdays will be here. Thank you. Good night.